govorili je gospodin Berg iz EBRD-a, direktor EBRD-a za Srbiju.
Can I steal this? Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Ambassador and Charge d'Affaires Israel and Mr. Mokas from TGI. I was here last year, and I think we joked a little bit. I see this tremendous attendance. I think maybe next year we have to consider splitting this conference in two and having one session on property and property sector development, which can spend days and days, and we have so many good property developers here, and also maybe a session on the infrastructure around that property. They're obviously connected, but I think we could spend a lot of time on PPPs and on parking garages and on bus terminals and on the riverside infrastructure that is required for the property. I was chatting with our moderator a little bit, and I focus, you'll see today, on property sector. I think last year the discussion was a bit more on infrastructure, so today I thought I would focus on property. The one thing I will say at the European Bank is they are connected. Obviously, you need good infrastructure for the property to survive, and the property will promote, as Mr. Vesic said, will promote good infrastructure, and as the minister said, and as we know, good policies and good governance is needed. But the other thing I would focus on, and the EBRD is focusing quite a lot on, is the green economy, and it was mentioned, the environmental impacts, the environmental benefits of having a well-functioning municipality, having the policies right, and having good property investors, who we have here in Serbia, and I'm glad to say we finance some of them, and finance some of the infrastructure, but I'll turn a lot to the efficiency of energy. Why do I do that? Because globally, buildings take up about 40% of global energy use. They take up about 25% of global water, and overall, they emit about 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. We don't think about it. It's both our residential, it's our real estate, it's our offices, it's our shopping malls. They have not been the focus of energy efficiency historically until the last 10, 15 years or so. So a lot of the old stock of property is very inefficient, and it's also very hard to change, because you can build one building, one investor building a new office space, you can make that maybe a little bit easier, but the residential stock in particular is hard to change. So I'll go fairly quickly. I have a number of slides, but most of them are very quick to run through, and I won't spend a lot of time, and then I'll come back and focus on energy efficiency in the property sector a little later. So just to remind you, one slide is missing, so that's good news. No, a couple of slides are missing. Just to say, I'll be even faster, but the first slide, which is supposed to be about the EBRD in general, just to say we've invested across Eastern Europe more than 100 billion, 115 billion euro. This slide is focused on Serbia, but we now work in 38 countries. We're owned by 65 countries, including Serbia, and we're investing about 8 or 9 billion a year across Eastern Europe and North Africa. Oh, sorry, so then this slide is on Serbia. Just to point out, we're up to about 4.5 billion invested in Serbia. We've been here for 15 years, since 16 years since 2001. We've dispersed about 3.5 of that 4.5 billion euro, and the private sector is 55% of it, and you can see the growth each year. Where is it invested? It's invested in the way we divide things in 4 areas. So industry, commerce, which includes also the property sector, energy, infrastructure, and financial institutions. And then the second slide, the second pie, is the number of projects versus the size of the project. You can see that property and industry and commerce and the financial institutions are smaller projects, but they end up being a lot of the portfolio. So we do more projects in those sectors, over 80 projects in each sector. We have an office here for the last 16 years. I run the office of 37 people now. It focuses on all of the sectors. So, of course, we're happy to see all of these investors, both from the infrastructure side, but also from the property side, and we'll be happy to see you in our office. Just to give you some examples of what we've done the last couple years, I'll just focus on these 5. This is just 5 of the projects that we financed the last couple years, going from the smallest, where we're financing banks that lend to women-led businesses. These are loans of 20, 30, 40,000 euro, which are reaching women-led businesses, up to the largest project, a couple $100 million, for electric power of Serbia, which is helping them both become more efficient, but also helping them improve their environmental and social standards. In a property sense, we financed last year the Lidl rollout, Schwartz Kaufland Lidl supermarket chain. I think what's important here is to say that the work is very green. The new buildings will be meeting the highest standards of building concepts and resource efficiency. And the same is true of the project with the bus company of Belgrade. We're happy to be bringing higher quality buses, but also working with the city on the traffic management, the traffic maintenance, so that they are more efficiently operating, both from an emissions point of view, but from a traffic patterns point of view. One thing that we've done the last year is our investment climate and governance initiative. This was signed between Prime Minister Vučić and our president in late 2015, and for the last 14, 15 months we've been developing policy advice, even more than we had done before, and a couple of the things are very relevant for today. I mentioned in the bottom here the public-private partnerships assistance. We're helping the Commission to strengthen its capacity, the Commission for Protection on Competition. We're helping this year on the inspections reform, so there will be an inspection streamlining. Contract enforcement, I think, for investors, obviously very important. And public procurement, and here we'll be focusing also on improving green procurement initiatives. That leads you kind of into what we do in the property sector. This is our bank-wide, this is not Serbia-wide, so just over the last 15, 16 years, 2.5 billion accumulatively in the property sector, including our participation in funds. 52% of which is equity, a large portion of which is for property funds, which do operate here in the region. So we don't always invest directly in property, but we operate through funds. You can see the sectors that are, sorry, reaching. I've lost contact. Can you go to the next slide, please, from the back? There we go. To see where we're investing, the largest pie is the property funds, which have and will continue to invest in the region. But then retail is the second biggest piece of the pie, followed by various things. The next biggest, I guess, is hotels. Thank you. I think where we can see catching up in Serbia, when we turn to Belgrade and Serbia, you can see that the office complexes are catching up very quickly. Hotels have already, for the most part, caught up, and we're seeing now a move, as the Charge d'Affaires of Israel said, into residential and retail, residential and logistics and retail mix. Oh, now it's jumping ahead. Yes, so the next slide, I'm going to skip over these 2 slides. These are kind of for the investors. This is how we work. Should be working? Let's try again. Just to give examples, the first one is a financing structure for debt and a financing structure for equity. EBRD can invest in equity as well. So these are, if you want to come and talk to us, the kind of structures we would work on with you to give you a sense of here you are the sponsor. But let's not focus on that today unless you want to come and talk to me after the meeting. And I've lost it again. Up there. And just to say that normally EBRD is going to finance 35% of a project, and I'm very proud of that the last point there, strong sponsors in introducing green and sustainable buildings. So coming back to where I started, just to talk about Serbia and the green financing, which I think I think in some ways the long transition is an advantage as well, because you may skip over some of the mistakes made 20 years ago or 25 years ago, being able in the last 10 years to benefit from what we're seeing across the world. and making sure that the city is developing and the investors are developing in a very green way. At EBRD, we focused on energy efficiency since 1994. I think we were the first IFI to have a special team in energy efficiency. In the EBRD's original mandate, there is a green environmental mandate, and we've been tracking these investments for the last 11 years. In Serbia, 50 of our projects registering 800 million euro have been devoted as green or has been labeled as green, and you can see where they were. So it was in energy efficiency for industry and buildings, it was in energy production, municipal infrastructure where we're helping on the green side, and then credit lines and renewable energy. How do we do that? Well, coming back to the Investment, Climate, and Governance Initiative, a lot of policy dialogue. We work with the government quite actively on this bottom piece, so addressing sustainable and environmental failures, strengthen institutional and regulatory context. Then we provide technical assistance to prove those things. This year we're looking at energy service contracting, we're looking at the PPP contracting for lighting and parking, all of the areas of policy dialogue to make the green economy work. And then, of course, the ultimate goal is to provide financing to those projects that are viable and sustainable. Maybe I'll let the back handle this. I'll just ask for you to change them. I don't know if my battery is. No. Could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Just to give you a sense, we have what's called the Regional and Energy Efficiency Program, which for 2013-16 we did a 3-year effort, and we've seen some real successes here. It's been important to have a good cooperation with various municipal and national level agencies. So we've introduced the ESCO model more and more. We've provided legal advice. We've provided contract templates. We've been looking at the comparisons with the ESCO model to the procurement law, which was a problem until last year. We think we've fixed that problem now. So we've been working with the ministry, working with various municipalities. And the first street lighting projects, some of you may know, the first street lighting projects have now been contracted. These are being done as long-term contracts, PPPs, between companies which will install lighting and then manage the lighting over a 12 to 15-year period. We're looking to work with the city of Belgrade as another model on lighting. Energy efficiency procurement in public buildings, we've been working with the ministry here, and new procurement policies with the procurement agency, and then transposition of EU directives. Again, looking at what happens next, so now we're looking at Regional Energy Efficiency Plus, as we're calling it. We needed a new name, so we went from Regional Energy Efficiency Program Normal to Plus. And here we're going to expand a lot in both in the ESCO model. We have grants where we're going to be developing with EU and other donors. We have continuing policy dialogue on implementing the energy efficiency performance in buildings directive, and the energy efficiency directive more generally, which is the market development and policy dialogue. Then we'll be providing credit lines and direct lending to investors, and then we'll be working with municipalities. And here I'm glad to say that the government just 2 weeks ago signed on as one of 8 of our countries to benefit from the Green Climate Fund, which is a concessional financing window where we're going to be doing 2 things. We'll be doing together with the Green Climate Fund, sustainable energy finance facilities, so more renewable energy, more energy efficiency credit lines, but also we're looking at the Green Cities Initiative, and we're hoping that Belgrade will be one of the first cities in the Green Cities Initiative. It started in Georgia Tbilisi as our first Green Cities Initiative, but we're trying to bring Belgrade in 2017. So policy dialogue, ESCO market, and direct lending, I've said that. And then I mentioned the sustainable energy finance facilities, that's the GEF, and then the grant funds. So that will be REAP Plus, so I can rush through that a bit. Just to give you a few case studies of how our financing works in reality. Here in Serbia recently, we financed last year, as I mentioned, the Lidl Group, the Schwartz investment, which we'll see both new and refurbished buildings across the region. I mentioned Slovenia as well. These are all buildings which are being done both with some auditing by us, some technical assistance by us, but working with sponsors who want to put in place the highest quality investments. This is an example of a green property fund in Poland, since so much of our work has been done on property funds, where we're working on both the level of the sponsor, but also on the leasing, to make sure that they are signing sub-agreements, leases with their clients, so the clients are cooperating with the owner to put in place some higher sustainability criteria. And finally, just to mention 3 property projects here in Belgrade. So the GTC office buildings all meeting higher standards of development, the old mill reconstruction of a brownfield site, and the Zemun Retail Park, which is very green and efficient. And all of them are now, well, the GTC and Zemun, of course, are nearly fully leased out. The old mill, I hope you take advantage of it, but not in front of the Metropole. So today we're using the Metropole, but I hope you'll take advantage of it. And just to say, as I said, the most important thing is to find the clients that want to work with us on green and sustainable investments, be they in infrastructure, be they in property. So you can find us, not just me, but our address is there, I hope. And we have, as I said, 37 bankers working on all of the sectors, and particularly on infrastructure and property. They'd be happy to hear from you today or on any day. Thank you.